There has been a systemic failure of the justice system for decades. A systemic failure to hold people who are powerful and have money to account, and that has allowed not just hundreds but potentially thousands of women, not only in the United States but around the world, to be bought, sold, and trafficked for sex, not only by Jeffrey Epstein but by his associates and his rich and powerful friends. Well, I'm Melanie Stansbury, and I represent New Mexico's 1st Congressional District, and I want to say that I'm truly stunned by what I heard today. The thing about being a victim of assault, of sexual violence, is that it not only steals your sense of self, it steals your dignity, it steals your ambition, it steals your hopes, it steals your dreams, and it steals your sense of personhood. And what we heard today is from a half dozen victims, some of whom have already pursued both civil and criminal suits against both Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, as well as from several who have never told their stories in public before. But before I turn to the substance of the case itself, I want to say to anyone out there who is currently experiencing abuse of any kind, we see you. We are here fighting for you, and we will fight for justice for every person who is experiencing sexual violence in this country, and that is what this case is actually about. But I want to be clear that what we heard today is a cover-up, and it is a cover-up of epic proportions, a cover-up involving the United States government, the justice system, rich and powerful individuals, a cover-up potentially involving foreign countries and foreign actors. And yes, here today in this House, as our colleagues are up in the House chamber in the Rules Committee, a cover-up by the Republicans in this chamber. Because as you will find out in the coming days and weeks, this goes all the way to the top. So let's be clear about that. There has been a systemic failure of the justice system for decades. A systemic failure to hold people who are powerful and have money to account, and that has allowed not just hundreds but potentially thousands of women, not only in the United States but around the world, to be bought, sold, and trafficked for sex, not only by Jeffrey Epstein but by his associates and his rich and powerful friends. And as these stories come forward, whether they're stories that have already been told, they're stories in those FBI files that have not been released by the Department of Justice and which they must release because of the subpoena, or whether they are stories of victims that have not yet come forward, we will hold you all accountable for this miscarriage of justice, for the abuse of these women and the abuse of this institution to try to cover it up. Because there happens to be a very powerful person at the top who doesn't want these stories out. So that is why we subpoenaed these records. That is why these victims were here today to bravely tell their stories. And whatever justice looks like in the coming days and weeks and years, we will follow every thread. We will follow every piece of evidence. We will follow every bank record. We will follow every investigation. We will follow every court order, and we will make sure that those who were abused by these men are held accountable.
When Congresswoman Melanie Stansbury delivered this statement, it wasn't just a political soundbite. It was an indictment of a system that has failed survivors of sexual abuse for decades. She framed the Epstein scandal not as a closed chapter, but as an ongoing cover-up that stretches far beyond one man, one trial, or even one courtroom. Think about what she's really saying here. The pain of assault isn't just physical. It strips away identity, ambition, dreams, and dignity. Survivors are left to pick up the shattered pieces of who they are, often while facing indifference or outright obstruction from those with power. That is the real crime behind the Epstein network, not just the abuse itself, but the deliberate protection of abusers through money, influence, and political connections. And that brings us to the heart of her message: cover-up. According to Stansbury, this isn't just about Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. It's about a system that shields the wealthy and powerful. Files are sealed, subpoenas ignored, and institutions that are supposed to serve justice are instead complicit in hiding the truth. She even points out that foreign actors may have been involved, widening the scope from a national scandal to a global web of corruption and exploitation. Her words, "this goes all the way to the top," aren't exaggeration, they're a warning. Because if powerful names are contained within those unreleased FBI and DOJ files, then the silence isn't accidental, it's intentional. It's protection, not of the public, but of elites who believe they are untouchable. But why does this matter for ordinary people? Because every time the justice system bends for billionaires, it breaks for everyone else. Every time politicians cover up the crimes of the wealthy, they reinforce a system where victims are left voiceless and powerless. And as Stansbury makes clear, this is not partisan posturing. This is about human dignity, accountability, and whether the United States will uphold the principles it claims to stand for. She reminds us of the scale: hundreds, maybe thousands, of women trafficked, abused, and silenced, not just in America, but worldwide. And while many of us may think of Epstein as a disgraced, dead financier, Stansbury emphasizes that the network he built, the associates and rich friends, remains largely untouched. Justice has not yet been served. And here's the uncomfortable truth: scandals like Epstein's are not anomalies, they are symptoms. They reveal what happens when money and influence override law, when institutions meant to protect instead conceal, and when those at the top operate as though they're beyond accountability. That's why Stansbury's commitment to follow every thread, every subpoena, every financial record, every victim's testimony is so important. Because without persistence, the powerful always win. So here's the question for us: will America finally confront the full truth of Epstein's crimes and those who enabled him? Or will this be another case where outrage fades, documents remain sealed, and survivors are once again left in the shadows? The fight for justice here isn't just about the past. It's about whether we allow systems of exploitation and silence to persist in the future. And that's where you come in. Stay informed, demand transparency, and keep the pressure on leaders who would rather sweep this under the rug. Because as Melanie Stansbury said, this goes all the way to the top. And the only way the truth comes out is if people refuse to look away.